Hello, everyone, and welcome to Real Talk with Claudia. I'm your host, Claudia Ellis of Claudia's Decor. Whether you're joining me live, catching the replay on YouTube, or listening while you're working in your craft room, driving down the road, or folding laundry, thank you for spending part of your day with me. Grab your favorite drink, get comfortable, and let's just have a conversation. Because that's really what Real Talk is about. This isn't a class. This isn't a sermon. It isn't me pretending to have all the answers because I don't. It's simply two friends sitting across the table, asking questions, sharing experiences, and hopefully walking away seeing things a little differently than we started. Today's topic is one that I think almost every entrepreneur, creator, small business owner, and honestly, just about every person has wrestled with at some point. If you are an online business, then you hear it all the time that going live matters. Well, we're going to have a conversation about that so that those that don't go live, have no interest in going live, and want to do their business differently, you can give yourself permission to do it your way, okay? Before you think, well, I don't go live, so this isn't for me, stay with me. Because I have a feeling this conversation isn't really about pressing the go live button. I think it's about something much deeper. Fear has a funny way of disguising itself. Sometimes it's called perfection. Sometimes it's called preparation. And sometimes it calls itself wisdom. And sometimes it whispers, maybe next week. I'll do it when I'm more confident. I'm just not ready yet. So today, I don't want to convince anyone that they have to go live. What I want us to do is discover together, is this how many opportunities have we missed because we were waiting to feel ready? I'd love for this to be a conversation. So if you're watching live, jump into the comments. Tell me your thoughts, your experiences, or even your fears. Chances are someone else is thinking the exact same thing. So let's talk. Let me start by asking you a question, okay? How many opportunities have you missed because you were waiting to feel ready? Imagine not wanting to walk as a baby because you didn't feel ready. I mean, where does that fear come in? Where does having to be ready to do something make it okay for you? I want you to really think about that for a minute. Not just about going live, but about life, about business, about relationships, about all the things we've wanted to do, but keep telling ourselves maybe later. Because I think if we're honest, every one of us has something we've been putting off. Maybe it's launching that Etsy shop. Maybe it's raising our prices. Maybe it's applying for that craft show. Maybe it's introducing yourself as a business owner instead of saying, oh, I just make wreaths. Hey, Carly. Or maybe it's pressing that little thing, that little button, that go live button. Now, here's what I've been thinking about all week. We all say the same thing. I'm just not ready. Have you noticed that? Hey, Amber. We don't usually say I'm scared. We don't say I'm afraid people are going to judge me. We don't say I'm terrified I'm going to make a fool of myself. No. We say something that sounds much more responsible. I'm just not ready yet. And the more I've thought about that, the more I've wondered, what does ready even mean? Seriously, if I asked every one of you watching today to write down what ready looks like, I wonder how many different answers we'll get. Some of you would probably say, I need more followers. Some would say, I need better lighting. I need a cleaner craft room. I need to lose weight. I need to know what I'm talking about. I need more confidence. I need to stop saying, I need to be more interesting. I need better internet. I need to get over being nervous. And here's the funny thing. Every one of those sounds reasonable. None of them sound ridiculous. In fact, if your best friend told you one of those things, you'd probably nod your head and say, yeah, that makes sense. But here's where my curiosity started this week. What if those aren't actually the reason? What if they're the explanation? We're becoming comfortable, what if they're the explanation we've become comfortable giving ourselves? It sounds more like an excuse, right? But I've noticed something. The goalpost keeps moving. Have you ever noticed that in your own life with anything that you're working on? The goalpost keeps moving. Maybe you tell yourself, I'll go live when I hit 500 followers. Then you hit 500 followers. And suddenly it's, well, I probably need a better camera first. Then you get the camera. Well, I should probably organize my craft room. You organize the craft room. Maybe after Christmas. Christmas comes and goes. Maybe after the wedding. And if you guys know, that is my season right now. The wedding comes and goes. Maybe after vacation. And then the vacation. Then after school starts. Then after things settle down. Can I ask you something? When do things ever really settle down? When does life actually take a pause for you to do the thing that you said you were going to do when things settle down? Because I don't know about you, but life has a way of filling every empty space we give it. There will always be another project, always another holiday, always another reason, another excuse that sounds perfectly logical. And I don't even like using the word excuse because I don't think most of us are making excuses. I think we're trying to protect ourselves. And that's different. See, that's where I think we've been looking at it all wrong. I don't think we're actually waiting to feel ready. I don't think we're waiting to stop feeling afraid. Those are not the same thing. Carly, yep, I can be good at some of them. I hear you. Think about that just for a second, okay? We're not waiting to feel ready. We're not waiting to stop feeling afraid because those aren't the same thing. Because if we're waiting to stop being afraid, we might be waiting a very long time. Now, something I've learned, not because somebody taught it to me, but because I've lived it. There are things in my life that I never would have felt ready until I was already doing them. Real talk is one of them. Do you think I woke up one Friday morning thinking, you know what? I think I'm ready to host a weekly live conversation where people expect me to have something meaningful to say? No. I was nervous. I questioned myself. I wondered if anybody would even care. I wondered if I'd run out of things to talk about. I wondered if people would think, who does she think she is? And yet here we are. Hi, Shona. Hi, Cricket. Not because I became fearless, but because somewhere along the way, I realized something. Confidence didn't show up before I started. Confidence started showing up because I started. And I wonder how many things in our business work exactly the same way. Think about your Etsy shop or wherever you sell your stuff. Were you completely confident before you opened it? Or did you figure things out as you went? Your first craft show, did you know exactly what to expect? Or did you learn from doing it? Your first custom order, your first wreath, your first bow, your first YouTube tutorial, your first sale. Your first vendor event. How many of these things felt comfortable before you did them? I'm guessing not many. So why have we decided that going live is the one thing where we're supposed to feel completely confident before we begin? Who made that rule? Because I don't remember voting on it. And here's another thing I've been thinking about. We celebrate beginners in almost every other area of life. If somebody says, I'm learning to play guitar, we don't expect them to sound professional, right? We don't expect them to be a professional musician. If someone says, I'm training for the first 5K, we don't expect them to be an Olympian. If somebody tells us, I just opened my Etsy shop, we don't expect thousands of sales overnight. So why is it that when it comes to going live, we expect our first live to look like someone else's 500th? That's a lot of pressure. And I don't think we even realize we're doing it. I think we spent so much time watching polished creators that we've forgotten they had a beginning too. Somewhere they had a first live, a first awkward silence, a first technical problem, a first moment where they lost their train of thought, a first live where almost nobody showed up. We didn't see it, or if we did, we've forgotten about it, because success has a funny way of making us edit people's stories. We see where they are now, and we forgot where they started. And then we compare our beginning to their middle, or even their 10th chapter. I really want to hear your answers to this question. When you say, I'm not ready, what does that actually mean? Finish that sentence. I'm not ready because, and I want you to be honest, not the answer that sounds good, the real answer. I have a feeling there are going to be a whole lot of people reading the comments thinking, oh my goodness, I thought I was the only one. So I'm not ready because fill in the blank. Maybe this is because I'm actually chicken. Well, you're not a chicken. I know that you're a human being, so that's not true. You're not actually a chicken. If I'm honest, the wedding that I'm doing for my daughter has been my excuse lately because I'm really working on getting all that stuff done. Anisha, I'm afraid of being judged and my product isn't good enough. That's a real reason for you. That's a real reason for you. And here's the other part of it. Do you judge people when you watch people? Like, are you judging me right now? You don't have to share that if you are, but you have to think of it to yourself. It's brave, right? Putting yourself out here with the anonymousness of who's watching you on the other side. It's brave. It is. It's brave. It's getting out of your comfort. I'm trying to learn. I get it. But understand this, okay? Sometimes the confidence that comes from doing the thing can be just saying, hey, this is my first time going live. I'm trying to get used to responding to comments. I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to show up in this online world. Sometimes it takes just being honest with yourself as to what your intent is to be out here, right? Maybe the problem isn't that we don't know how to go live. Maybe the problem isn't that we need another tutorial. Maybe the problem isn't better equipment or better lighting or a prettier craft room. Maybe, just maybe, we've been waiting for fear to leave before we give ourselves permission to begin. And if that's true, then I think it leads to us it leads us to an even more interesting question. Because if fear is keeping us from pressing that button, who exactly are we so afraid is watching? Shona, I'm afraid no one will show up and that my design won't come out right. Nobody showing up is a gift to the person that hit that live button. Let me explain. You hit the button. It allows you to focus on your creation and not over here. So it gives you time to adjust to going live. Okay? If people showed up and your chat was going nuts and you're trying to design at the same time and you've never gone live before, you need to get used to hitting that live button and just doing it so that it all adds up. Does that make sense? So the fears that we have of the unknown, of the things that we don't know what will happen, are really just in our head. Sometimes we just have to learn as we go. We learn as we go, because you could be surprised. People that relate to you are going to want to support you, So remember, the things that you think will happen, it's almost a blessing if it happens, if that makes sense. If nobody shows up for your live, you can still pull from the content that you made to make other content, other videos, other things. Hey, look, I did a thing, right? Build your confidence before you build your audience. And by building your confidence, it's going to take hitting that live button. Okay? You have to basically practice your way into confidence. But not having people show up could actually be a good thing for you. Okay? So remember that. All right, let's move on. Who exactly are we so afraid is watching? You know, that's a strange question when you really stop and think about it. Who exactly are we afraid is watching? Because if someone asked us out of the blue, I don't think most of us can answer it. We'd probably say, I don't know, or maybe everybody. But is it really everybody? I don't think it is. I've been thinking about this all week, and I started asking myself, who am I actually picturing when I imagine going live? It's not as if you have all the eyeballs on you. It's different. It's not like you have stage fright because you're up in front of people and you have everybody looking at you, right? So it's different. This actually, if you think about it as a FaceTime call, do we think about hitting live or doing a FaceTime call with our friend? Do we ever think about it? Or we just, hey girl, how's your day going? What are you busy doing? What are you working on? It's easy, right? If you think of it the same way, when you hit that live button, yeah, people might be talking to you, people might be engaging with you, but they're not looking at you with their, you know what I mean? It's different. That's why practicing helps. That's why hitting that live button when you can helps. You have to tell yourself, I'm just going to do it. It's not going to hurt you. I promise it's not going to hurt you to hit that live button. And here's the other side of it. When you're done, if it's not going well, you have the power of turning it off. You have more control than you think. You have more control than you think. Okay? You do. All right? So this is, I'm trying to help you get out of your I'm a chicken mode, because it's not as hard as you think. It really isn't. But if you don't do it, less eye contact can make you more nervous. Okay. But that's the thing. You can do this any way that you would like. There's people that when they first started, they didn't even put their face on camera, and that's okay. People will watch you working just your hands and your table. People like that. Okay? So remember, there are a million different ways to put yourself out there. It doesn't have to be right here. Okay? Remember that. All right. All right. Who am I actually picturing when I'm going live? Okay. When we say we're afraid of people judging us, we make it sound like the entire internet. Now, listen to me, those that said that they were afraid of being judged. We make it sound like the entire internet has stopped what they were doing just to evaluate us. But let's be honest, most people are trying to figure out what they're making for dinner. They're trying to get kids to practice. They're answering emails. They're folding laundry. They're scrolling while they're waiting in line somewhere. They're thinking about their own lives. Most people aren't sitting around wondering if Claudia's lighting isn't good enough, or if your ribbon tails are perfectly even, or if your hair is behaving today. They're thinking about themselves, just like we're thinking about ourselves. Meaning less nervous is because you don't have the face-to-face eye contact. Yes, agreed. But you have to think of it that way. You have to think about it that way. Think about it like a FaceTime call. It makes a huge difference. Why does it feel like we're standing on stage with a spotlight shining directly on us? Where does that feeling come from? Because I don't think it's actually about the internet. I think it's much more personal than that. When you imagine pressing that go live button, who pops into your mind first? Is it your ideal customer, or is it someone else? Maybe it's somebody you went to high school with. Maybe it's your sister or your mother, somebody from church, another wreath maker, someone in a Facebook group whose opinion somehow carries way more weight than it should. Maybe it's that one person who always seems to have something negative to say. Isn't that interesting? Out of millions of people online, our brain has a habit of choosing one or two people and putting them in the front row. It's almost like we built an imaginary audience before we ever go live. And somehow that imaginary audience always seems to be made up of our biggest critics. Why is that? Why don't we imagine the customer who's been waiting for exactly what we have to offer? Why don't we picture the person who has no idea how to make a wreath and would love to learn something simple? Why don't we imagine the woman who's sitting at home watching, or sitting at home wondering if she's the only one struggling to grow her business? Why is our brain so much quicker to imagine criticism than connection? Carly, when I did my first live, I didn't even know how to reverse the camera and still can't at times. Oh girl, we've watched it. We've seen it. The struggle is real, but you will never get criticism from the person who's been out here and has done it themselves. Nobody that's hit that live button is going to criticize someone who's struggling on the other side. Let me tell you something. I applaud those that work it out, that work it through. If anything, I'm the one in the background trying to figure out how to help you. I want to be helpful. I want to help you. I want to get all that nervousness out. Always do a test run, by the way. Always do a test run. Don't just hit the live button and expect everything to work. Do a test run before you say, I'm going to go live for a certain amount of time. Do a test run. It helps. All right, let's move on. So why is our brain much quicker to imagine criticism than connection? I've really been wrestling with that because I don't think that's just a social media problem. I think that's a people problem. Think about this. Have you ever rehearsed a conversation in your head before you had it? Guilty. Maybe you were going to ask for a raise. Maybe you had to confront someone. Maybe you were going to tell somebody no. Didn't you automatically imagine the worst possible response? It's amazing, hi Sarah, how creative our minds become when we're predicting things that haven't happened yet. And most of the time, none of those imaginary conversations ever happen. We spend hours preparing for them. I wonder how often we do the exact same thing when we're going live. We rehearse people's reactions. She's trying too hard. Who does she think she is? She only has 3 people watching. She doesn't know what she's talking about. Can you tell it's coming out of my brain? They're all going to laugh. But here's what I find fascinating. Those aren't comments we've actually read. They're comments we've written ourselves. Think about that. Before anyone else has a chance to judge us, we've already judged ourselves. Before anyone says you're not ready, we've already said it. Before anybody questions whether we're qualified, we've already questioned it. Sometimes we're carrying around an imaginary conversation that only exists inside our own heads. Now, I don't want to oversimplify this because some of you have experienced real criticism. Some of you have posted something and someone did leave an ugly comment, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry that happened to you. Some of you have had family members who didn't understand why you were starting a business. Some of you have had friends who rolled their eyes. Some of you have been laughed at before. So I'm not saying these fears come out of nowhere. Sometimes they come from real experiences. But here's what I wonder. Do we allow one voice from our past to become the narrator of our future? That's a heavy question. Because one critical person can become the lens through which we see everyone else. And suddenly every new customer sounds like the old critic. Every new opportunity feels like another chance to be embarrassed. Every live video becomes another courtroom where we feel like we're on trial. Have you ever noticed that? I'd love to hear from you without naming names. Has there ever been one person whose opinion affected you more than it probably should have? Maybe they said something years ago. Maybe they never even intended it for it to stick, but somehow their voice still shows up when you're about to try something new. I think a lot about what we carry, because we carry more than we realize. And then there's something else I've been thinking about. Sometimes we're not afraid of strangers at all. We're afraid of people who already know us. Isn't that interesting? The people who watched us grow up, the people who knew us before we started the business, the people who remember us from another season in life. Why does that hold so much weight? Why does it feel different? Why does it sometimes feel easier to sell a wreath to someone 3 states away than to a neighbor down the street? Or easier to encourage a stranger than to let people we know watch us build something? I've wondered if maybe it's because strangers only know who we are today. People from our past sometimes keep expecting us to stay who we used to be. And when we start growing, that can make them uncomfortable. But should their discomfort become the boundary around our future? I don't think so. Something I've learned, the people who truly love you don't expect you to stay the same forever. They celebrate your growth. They cheer you when you try something new. They don't need your first live to be perfect. They're just excited that you were brave enough to press the button. And honestly, the people who are determined to criticize you, they don't need you to go live. They'll find something else. So if criticism is unavoidable, why are we allowing the possibility of criticism to stop the possibility of connection? Because here's who I think we're forgetting: the quiet person, the one who never comments, the one who's been watching for months, the woman who's thinking, I wish somebody would finally talk about this, the customer who's trying to decide if she trusts you, the creator who's convinced she's the only one who's scared. They're watching too, not to judge you, to find someone who understands. Maybe we've been giving far too much attention to the people who might reject us, and not nearly enough attention to the people who are hoping will show up. And that makes me think about something else. Because even if we somehow got past the fear of people judging us, there's another fear waiting right behind it. What if nobody shows up at all? What if nobody shows up at all? Can we talk about something that almost nobody admits out loud, which I'm proud of you that you guys, some of you did? I think for a lot of people, the biggest fear of going live is going live and nobody comes. Because just a few minutes ago, we were talking about being afraid that everybody would be watching us. Now we're talking about being afraid that nobody will. How can we be afraid of both? I've laughed about this week because, guys, I can see the number of people that are actually in watching me right now, right? I can see there's 7 people in here. If I click that button, and you can do it too, if you click that button, you see who's in here. You can see who's joined us, okay? But that number shouldn't matter, and here's why. People can watch without actually coming in. Did you know that? Not to freak people out, but people can watch from the outside. If they don't want you knowing that you're watching them, they can sit on the outside and watch from out here. So that number doesn't mean much, okay? And the people engaging with you, they'll either want to engage or not, or just say, hey, I'll watch this later. It's just Claudia. Claudia's talking. Claudia will always talk to her audience. Claudia will always engage with the audience. But if you're not engaging back with me, you can watch it on YouTube and just listen to it in the background, because I know the feelings that we have because I have them too. I'm talking to you from a place of experience, not because I think I'm better, okay? Because I wonder about these things. I wonder why I feel a certain way when I go live. I wonder why it bothers me when people don't say hi. Like, I wonder these things. So I go figure it out. I ask myself these questions and I drill it down. And then I come to you guys and I share what I figured out based on what it happens to me. So if that's beneficial to you, fantastic. But if nobody was here, I would still be talking. So there's that. Okay? So we're afraid of people judging us, and we're afraid that people won't notice us. Somehow both fears can exist at the same time. Have you ever scheduled a live, watched the countdown, pressed the button, and then immediately looked up at the little viewer count? I know I have. It's almost automatic. We tell ourselves we aren't going to look, and then the first thing we do is look. 1 person, 0 people, 2 people, back to 1. And I wonder, why does that number have so much power over us? It's just a number, but somehow it doesn't feel like a number. It feels personal. Why? I've been asking myself this question because if I'm honest, I don't think we're upset because the room is empty. I think we're upset because of what we believe the empty room means. You feel it, approval. I get it. I get it. Those are two different things. So being upset because the room is empty, right? Or upset because of what the empty room means. All right. So we're talking about approval. An empty room is a fact. What we make it mean, that's the story. And stories are powerful. An empty live becomes they're not interested. No one cares what I have to say. I'm wasting my time. I'm not good at this. Like immediately we go through this, right? I shouldn't have done this. Isn't it amazing how fast our minds write an entire story from one tiny little number? We don't stop and ask, maybe people are at work. Maybe they're eating dinner. Maybe TikTok, Facebook never showed the notification. Maybe TikTok pushed the live to the wrong audience. Maybe they'll watch the replay. No, we skip right over all those possibilities and we make it about ourselves. When you don't join someone's live, is it usually because you don't like them? Do you not join somebody's live because you don't like them? Sometimes you're driving. Sometimes you're working. Sometimes you're in the grocery store. Sometimes you see it and think, oh, I'll watch that later. Sometimes life is just life. So why don't we give ourselves the same grace? Why do we assume everyone else's absence is a verdict on our value? I've noticed something else. If 10 people walk into your living room, you'd probably think, wow, that's a great turnout. If 10 people came to your craft booth, you'd probably be excited to talk to them. If 10 people came to your class you were teaching, you'd be thrilled. But online, we look at 10 people and think, only 10? Who taught us that? At what point did 10 human beings become insignificant? Because 10 people isn't a number. It's 10 lives, 10 stories, 10 families, 10 people who chose to spend a little bit of their day with you. Imagine if 10 people knocked on your front door right now, wanting to hear what you had to say. Would you call that only 10? Of course not. So why don't we talk that way online? There's 6 of you in here right now. Thank you. Thank you for being here, for spending part of your day with me. I appreciate you so much. I wonder if social media has quietly changed our perspective. We're surrounded by viral videos, millions of views, hundreds of thousands of followers. We start believing those numbers are normal, and suddenly real people stop feeling like enough. I don't know about you, but I don't actually want millions of people who don't care. I'd rather have 20 people who truly want to be here. Wouldn't you? Think about the conversations you've had that changed your life. Most of them didn't happen in front of thousands of people. They happened around a dinner table, over coffee, in a small Bible study, at a craft retreat, in a hallway after church. Every single one of you matters. Every single individual one of you matters. Sometimes the smallest conversation leave the biggest fingerprints. So why have we convinced ourselves that meaningful has to be massive? Hi, Lenny. Right? Or in a lunch line. Absolutely. I think that's one of the biggest lies social media tells us, that impact is measured by volume. But is it? Let's say one woman watches your live replay tomorrow, whenever I get this YouTube up, okay? She's been thinking about opening an Etsy shop for 2 years. She's scared. She's convinced she's too old to start. Then she hears something you say, and it gives her the courage to finally do it. Would your live have been worth it? I think most of us would say yes. Now imagine you never went live because you were waiting for a bigger audience. She never hears it. That's a different way to look at it, isn't it? So if you didn't go live for that small audience and that one person didn't hear exactly what they needed to hear to take that next step, you can't wait for a bigger audience. You can't wait for bigger things. You have to do it and realize that those people that are watching, that small number, no matter what it is, that big number, no matter what it is, it matters and it's important. And what you have to share is valuable, regardless of what it is, okay? Maybe we've been measuring success by attendance when we should have been measuring it by impact. And here's something else I've learned from doing Real Talk. Some of the most meaningful messages don't arrive while I'm live. They come later. Sometimes it's that afternoon. Sometimes it's the next day. Sometimes somebody says, I watched the replay, or I couldn't comment because I was at work, or I've been thinking about what you said all night. Have you ever gotten one of those messages? The kind that reminds you, you never really know who's listening. You never really know whose day you're going to change. You never really know who's quietly sitting in the background thinking, I needed this today. Maybe the people who never comment are still part of the conversation. Maybe the replay matters just as much. Maybe the quiet people matter just as much. Maybe we've been looking at an empty room when God was looking at the one person who needed to be there. That's humbling. That's humbling. So let me ask you something. If you knew with absolute certainty that one person needed to hear what you had to say today, would one person be enough? I think my answer has changed. Years ago, I probably would have said no. Today, I think one person can change everything, because I realized something. We're not called to fill rooms. We're called to faithfully show up. What happens after that is always out of our control. But there's still another fear hiding underneath all of this, because sometimes people do show up. And strangely enough, that can be just as frightening, because then we start wondering, what if I don't know what to say? We spend a lot of time worrying about what we're going to say, but I don't think that's actually what we're afraid of. I think we're afraid of what people are going to see. Because here's the thing, a live video is different than a regular post. If I don't like a Facebook post, I can rewrite it. If I don't like an email, I can edit it. If I don't like a YouTube thumbnail, I can make another one. If I record a video and I stumble over my words, I can delete it and start over. Live doesn't give you that luxury. Live lets people see you thinking, pausing, searching for the right word, laughing at yourself, getting distracted in the comments, changing your mind in the middle of a sentence. And that's uncomfortable, because most of us have spent our lives trying to hide those moments. Sarah, my biggest fear is I'm not a talker and I can't possibly keep the conversation going. Small talk. Sarah, right? Small talk. It's hard to have small talk. I'm not a small talk person. I'm a deep one. I'm interested in people. I like knowing about people. Small talk is hard for me. You can only talk about the weather and what's for dinner so many times. But I understand that fear. I get that fear. I understand it. So that's when you tell a friend, hey, can you come into my live so we can keep the conversation going? That's when you buddy up with somebody that can help you and talk to you while you go live. Carly, I have a feeling, yes, small talk is difficult for you too. I don't do small talk. Think about it. The moment we connected and met in person, I mean, it was just talk, 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 but it wasn't small talk. It wasn't stuff that didn't matter. It was stuff with some meat to it, right? I get it. I understand that. Have you ever been talking to someone and completely lost your train of thought? All the time. All the time. What do we almost always say? Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. Why do we apologize? Nobody was hurt. Nothing bad happened. We simply had a human moment. And as we get older, those human moments happen more often. Yet somehow we've decided those moments should be embarrassing. I wonder where we learned that. Maybe that's why Alive feels different. It's one of the few places where people get to watch us think in real time. And thinking isn't always neat. Sometimes you start telling a story and halfway through you realize, wait a minute, that's not actually what I meant. Brain fog is real. Carly, brain fog is real. Have you ever done that though? Like been in the middle of a conversation and said, wait, that's not actually what I meant. I do it all the time. I'll start talking about one thing and then somewhere in the middle of it, I'll discover that what I actually believe. That's one of the reasons I love these conversations. It's not simply sharing ideas. Sometimes I'm discovering them right alongside of you. And honestly, I think that's where the best conversations happen. Not when someone has every answer, but when they're curious enough to ask better questions. When you watch somebody live, what keeps you there? When you watch somebody live, what keeps you there? Really think about it. Is it because they never make a mistake? Probably not. Is it because they never lose their place? No. Is it because every sentence comes out perfectly? Of course not. In fact, some of my favorite people to watch are the ones who feel like real people. They laugh when something goes wrong. Their dog starts barking. The ribbon falls on the floor. They forget what they were about to say. Somebody asks a question they weren't expecting, and instead of pretending none of it happened, they smile. They recover. They keep going. You know what that does? It makes you trust them because now I know they're real. Isn't that interesting? So your mess ups, your words tripping up over yourself, you making a mistake, that just makes you relatable. That just makes people want to hang out with you and get to see what's next. You never know what's going to happen, but it always makes you laugh. It brightens your day, right? The very thing we're trying so hard to hide may actually be the thing that makes people feel connected to us. Think about the people you enjoy spending time with, not online, in real life. Are they perfect? No. They're human. They interrupt themselves. They tell stories that wander. They laugh too hard. They forget names. They circle back around and say, now what was I talking about? And somehow none of that makes you like them less. Right? It makes you feel comfortable. So why do we expect ourselves to become somebody completely different the moment the camera turns on? Who told us that camera requires perfection? I've also been thinking about something else. Maybe what we're really afraid of isn't making a mistake. Maybe we're afraid people will change their opinion of us. That they'll think she's not as confident as I thought. She doesn't know as much as I thought. She isn't as polished as I expected. But let me answer another question. Or, excuse me, let me ask another question. Let me answer another question. Let me ask another question. Do you trust people because they're polished or because they're genuine? Do you trust them because they're polished or because they're genuine? Those aren't always the same thing, right? I've learned something about over the last couple of years. I've been doing this for 3 years. People don't connect with perfection. They connect with honesty. Hi, Veronica. Hi, sweet friend. They connect with warmth. They connect with someone who makes them feel welcome. Hi, Miss Courtney. That's one of the reasons I love walking into somebody's home who's really a good host. You don't leave thinking, wow, did you notice how perfectly they folded the napkins? Hi, Nailani. You leave thinking, I felt comfortable there. I felt seen. I felt welcomed. And as business owners, maybe that's our job too. Not to impress people, to welcome them. You typed that right when I called Veronica sweet friend. Oh, Nailani, thank you, honey. So you're not impressing people, right? You're welcoming them. You're creating a place where they feel comfortable enough to say, whether that's on your front porch, in your craft room, in your live video, maybe we've been trying to be impressive when what people really need is for us to be present. Forget impressing, be present. That changes everything, because I can be present even when I'm nervous. I can be present even if I lose my train of thought. I can be present even if I have to say, you know what? I don't think I explained that very well. Let me try again. And honestly, I think people appreciate that more than pretending we have it all together. When you're watching somebody live, what makes you trust them? What keeps you coming back? Is it what they know or how they make you feel? I have a feeling those answers might surprise you, because it has nothing to do with what they know. It has more to do with how they make you feel. That leads me to another question, right? It's how they make you feel. It's another question I've been wrestling with this week. If people really do connect more with authenticity than perfection, then why do we keep believing that we have to perform? Maybe we've confused having a conversation with putting on a show. I do this for free. I don't make money on this. I'm not here to entertain you, but I am entertaining you. Does that make sense? Like, I'm not here, thanks, Courtney. I'm not here to beg you to participate with me. I'm not here to get you to like me or get you to come back. But I am here because I care to be here, because I want to be here, because I know it's good for the community, and I know it's good for those that have to hear that what you believe about people not being nervous or being perfect or being super confident isn't true. The things you're telling yourself that others feel isn't true. So I want to encourage you to start thinking of others more so as they were in the same place you were before you hit that live button. I'm telling you, we tell ourselves stuff that isn't true. And stop telling yourself you're chicken and making that an excuse. You know who I'm talking to. All right. The more we've talked today, the more I keep coming back to this one thought. I don't think this conversation has really been about live video at all. I think live video just happened to be the doorway. Because when you really look at everything we've talked about, waiting until you're ready, wondering who's watching, being afraid of criticism, watching the viewer count. I need to drink my coffee, TikTok. An hour straight talking gets to you sometimes. Feeling like we have to perform, trying to get everything perfect before we begin. None of those things belong only to social media. They show up everywhere. They show up when we think about opening our Etsy shop, when we're deciding whether to raise our prices, when we're considering teaching our first class, when we finally have the chance to apply for that promotion, when we're thinking about writing the book that's been sitting in our hearts for years, when we feel God nudging us towards something that doesn't make sense at all. Fear doesn't stay in one place. It simply changes clothes. One day it looks like perfectionism. The next day it calls itself preparation. Sometimes it introduces itself as wisdom. Sometimes it hides behind phrases like maybe after the holidays, maybe when life settles down, maybe next year. The words change, but the voice is usually the same. And here's something I realized about fear. It rarely sounds dramatic. Fear almost never says, don't do it. Instead, it sounds incredibly reasonable. Let's wait a little longer. Let's learn one more thing. This isn't the right season. You'll probably do better after you have more experience. Have you noticed that? Fear doesn't usually push us backwards. It simply convinces us to stand still. And standing still feels safe until one day we look back and realize we've been standing in the same place for years. Have you ever looked back on an opportunity you didn't take, not because you truly didn't want it, but because you were afraid? I have. And honestly, those are the moments I think about the most. Not the things I tried that didn't work. Those taught me something. Not the mistakes I made. Those helped me grow. It's the opportunities I quietly walked away from because I convinced myself the timing wasn't right, or I wasn't ready, or someone else could do it better. Those are the ones that make me wonder, what if? Because failure answers a question. Failure says, now I know. Avoidance doesn't answer anything. Avoidance leaves us wondering. And if you've ever carried one of those what if questions for years, you know how heavy they can become. That's why I don't think the real question today is how do I stop being afraid? I don't know that any of us ever completely stop being afraid. I think the better question is, who's making my decisions? Is it me, or is it the fear pretending to be wisdom? Because those two voices can sound surprisingly similar. One asks honest questions, the other quietly closes doors before we've even looked through them. And unless we're paying attention, it's easy to mistake one for the other. Which leads me to something I've been wrestling with this week. How do we know the difference between making a wise business decision and simply letting fear make the decision for us? Because from the outside, those two things can look exactly the same. Am I choosing this, or is fear choosing it for me? I think we've arrived at the question that really is something that I needed to be asking. I don't have a simple answer, but I do have a question that I think every business owner should ask themselves. Who is making the decision? Who is making the decision? If it's you, great. If it's fear, you need to look at that. You need to kick fear's butt. Okay? Fear, we can't do things out of fear in everything that we do. We'll never get anywhere. We'll never do anything. I'm not here to convince everyone that you need to start going live. I'm really not. There are incredible businesses that have built their business without ever going live. There are artists who communicate beautifully through their photography, writers who connect through newsletters, teachers who create amazing pre-recorded tutorials, people who thrive on podcasts, people who build strong local businesses without ever turning on a camera. There isn't just one way to build trust. There isn't just one way to grow. There isn't just one way to serve people. So if you've been sitting here all afternoon waiting for me to say everybody needs to go live, you're going to be disappointed. Because I don't believe that. What I do believe is that we owe ourselves an honest conversation. Because sometimes we say, I've decided live video isn't for me. And that's absolutely true. But sometimes we say those exact same words when what we really mean is, I'm too afraid to try. And those are completely different decisions. But they can look exactly the same. That's what makes this so difficult. Let's think about that for a minute. Imagine two business owners. Both of them decide they aren't going to go live. The first one says, I've looked at the way I like to communicate. I've looked at my strengths. I've looked at my customers. I've looked at where I enjoy spending my energy. And I've decided that writing the long form videos fit me better. That's a thoughtful business decision. Now imagine someone else. I've never gone live. The thought of it makes me sick to my stomach. I'm terrified people will judge me. So I've decided live video isn't for me. Same outcome, very different reason. Can you see the difference? One decision came from clarity. The other may have come from fear. The first one had direction. They knew exactly the way they were going to show up. The second one just put it into fear and that was it. They just backed out. Not because one person is right and the other person is wrong, but because I don't want fear quietly making business decisions while pretending to be wisdom. Have you ever noticed how convincing fear can sound? Fear rarely announces itself. It doesn't usually say, hi, I'm fear. Instead, it says, I'm just being realistic. I'm protecting my peace. I'm waiting for the right time. I'm doing more research. I'm just not the kind of person. Sometimes these statements are true and sometimes they aren't. The hard part is having enough honesty with ourselves to know the difference. Has there ever been something in your life that you were absolutely convinced wasn't for you, only to discover later it wasn't that it wasn't for you, you were just scared? I have, more than once. And looking back, I don't even regret trying. I don't regret trying. I don't regret the things that I tried, even the things that didn't become permanent, because trying taught me something about myself. Not trying taught me very little. If fear disappeared for 24 hours, what would you do? Let's just say all thoughts of fear disappeared for 24 hours. You don't fear anything. What would you do? If you knew nobody would judge you, nobody would laugh, nobody would criticize, nobody would misunderstand you, what would you do in those 24 hours? Would you finally start the YouTube channel? Would you apply for that craft show? Would you raise your prices? Would you introduce yourself as an artist? Because by the way, all my little wreath making friends, you're an artist. You are an artist. What you create is art. Trying is a victory. Absolutely. Would you finally go live if fear was not a factor for 24 hours? Would you launch that product you've been sitting on? Whatever just came to your mind, pay attention to it, because that might be showing you something. Not necessarily what you have to do, but what fear may have been holding on to. Here's where I think you have to be careful. I don't believe we should run towards every fear just because it's scary. Sometimes no is the wisest answer. Sometimes a strategy genuinely doesn't fit your business. Sometimes another approach makes far more sense. But wisdom asks questions. Fear shuts conversations down. Wisdom says, let's evaluate this. Fear says, absolutely not. Wisdom gathers information. Fear gathers excuses. Wisdom leaves room for possibilities. Fear usually closes the door before we've even looked through it. And maybe that's the difference. Not the answer we arrive at, but whether we can actually allow ourselves to ask the question. You can honestly say, I explored it, I considered it, I prayed about it, I thought it through, and this is the decision that's right for me. If the answer is yes, wonderful, own the decision. But if the answer is, I've been avoiding it because it terrifies me, maybe that's worth sitting with. Not because you have to change your mind, but because self-awareness changes everything. I've learned that fear loses some of its power the moment we finally tell the truth about it. Instead of saying, I don't have time, maybe the truth is, I'm afraid. Instead of saying, I'm not ready, maybe the truth is I don't want to fail. Instead of saying it isn't for me, maybe the truth is I don't know if I can handle people watching me. And do you know what happens when we finally tell ourselves the truth? We can actually begin having the honest conversation, because we can't solve a problem we're pretending we don't have. That's one of the greatest gifts of self-awareness. Not judgment, just honesty. Honesty gives us choices. Pretending keeps us stuck. So maybe the invitation today isn't go live. Maybe it's simply this: be honest. Ask yourself, who's making the decision, me or fear? And then listen carefully to the answer. Because I have a feeling that answer reaches far beyond social media. It probably touches every corner of our lives. And that makes me wonder about something else. If we decided to press the button, what is it about live video that creates such a different kind of connection than edited content? Why do customers remember it? Why does it build trust? I think that's where we need to go next. Hey, Miss Kelly. Hi, my friend. After everything we've talked about today, why does live video matter so much anyway? Because if we're going to spend all this time talking about our fear of going live, maybe we should stop and ask, is it even worth it? That's a fair question. I've heard people say you don't need to go live, and honestly, they're right. You don't. There are businesses making wonderful products that rarely, if ever, go live. So this isn't about saying that is the only way. But it's asking, what is it that lives give us that other things don't? What is it that you like about watching somebody live creating, making something, learning, or even if they're teaching like technique or anything like that? What is it about the live that you enjoy? Is it the fact that you can talk to them? Is it the fact that you can engage, that you can ask questions and get real answers, like live answers? So you have to understand that when you go live, you're giving that to somebody else. You're giving that interaction to somebody else. You're allowing them to engage, right? What is it about watching somebody live? What does it give us that other things don't? Think about that. Is it really about the video, or is it about relationship? Let's imagine something for a minute. You walk into a local coffee shop. You've never been there before. It's a connection, right, Eminem? The coffee is good, the place is clean, everything looks nice. Then the owner walks over, smiles, remembers your name, asks how your family is doing, and genuinely seems happy you're there. Now think about how different that experience feels. The coffee didn't change, the relationship did. And somehow that changes everything. I think business works the same way. Okay, I don't have a storefront. I don't have a place people can go to come in and look at my items. This is my storefront. This is my hi, I'm so happy you're here. Thanks for coming in. How are you today? It's relationship. When you see people's names, when you engage with them, it's all about that relationship. This is your storefront. This is where people can come and watch and engage with you. That's a way of thinking about it too. Okay? It's that see, know, and trust. See, know, and trust. That's a fact. Okay? Changes everything. Changes everything. People don't just remember what we sell, they remember how we make them feel. You ever bought from someone simply because you like them? Have you ever bought from somebody just because you like them? Not because they were the cheapest, not because they were the fanciest website, not because their logo was prettier. You just trusted them. You enjoyed being around them. You felt comfortable asking questions. You knew they'd take care of you, right? I know I have. In fact, there are businesses I'll happily pay a little bit more because I know the people behind them. That's trust. And trust doesn't happen all at once. Trust is built in little moments. A conversation, a reply to a comment, a kind message, remembering someone's name, showing up consistently, being honest when something goes wrong, keeping your word. Live video is just one more place where those little moments can happen. It's not magic. It's simply another opportunity for people to get to know the person behind the business. Think about your own business. When someone buys one of your wreaths, they're not just buying ribbon and florals. They're inviting something you created into their home. That's personal. People want to know who's making it, who's packing it, who's praying over their order, who's answering their message, who's celebrating when another Etsy notification comes through. They want to know there's a real person on the other side. And honestly, I think that's becoming more important, not less, because we live in a world where so much feels automated, artificial, generated, scheduled. People are craving something real. They're craving conversations. They're craving warmth. They're craving authenticity, not perfection. Just authenticity. I've noticed something in my own business. Sometimes people will message me and say, I feel like I already know you. Have you ever had somebody say that? The first time somebody said that to me, I remember thinking, that's interesting, because they didn't actually know me, but they knew my personality. They knew my laugh. They knew the stories I told. They knew the way I welcome people. They knew how excited I get when I create something I'm proud of. Those little moments added up, not because I was trying to build trust, because I was simply showing up consistently as myself. Carly. She's like, yes, it was you. And maybe that's the part we've misunderstood. Trust isn't something we manufacture. It's something we earn, one conversation at a time, one interaction at a time, one honest moment at a time. That's true in friendships, it's true in marriage, it's true in church, and I think it's true in business too. Think about the creators you enjoy following. Why do you keep coming back? Really think about it. Is it because every video was perfect? Connected with every video makes you laugh? Although literally I said that and one person did come to mind that every time they create a video, it makes me giggle. Or is it because you feel connected to them? Okay, whether they make you laugh, they teach you something, they encourage you, they simply make you feel welcomed. Isn't that what keeps us coming back? Connection, not perfection. And I wonder if we're underestimating just how powerful that is, especially in handmade business. People aren't buying something that rolled off an assembly line. They're buying something that came from someone's hands, something creative, someone's heart. What if they also got to know the person behind those hands? That's something a picture can't always communicate. A finished wreath tells one story. Watching someone create it, hearing why you chose those colors, watching them solve a problem, seeing them smile when it all comes together, that's a completely different experience. The product didn't change, the connection did. Now, does that mean you have to do that live? Not necessarily, but if fear is keeping you from building deeper relationships with the people you're trying to serve, maybe that's worth paying attention to. Because here's what I think. People don't become loyal customers because we have the perfect camera. They become loyal customers because they begin to trust the person holding it. And trust is built through moments, little moments, repeated over time. That's true whether you're on the front porch welcoming guests into your home or welcoming someone into a live conversation. Maybe that's why it feels different, not because it's better, but because it's personal. And that makes me think about one last thing. Maybe courage grows the very same way. Maybe courage grows the very same way, one step at a time, one live at a time. You'll get courageous about it. The live button will then become something that you hit without thinking because you know how important it is to make people feel welcomed into your business. This is your storefront. This is your storefront. Come in, look around. What can I make for you? It's your storefront. It's your business. You are your business. So you need to put yourself out here. I don't think I understood courage the way I do now. For years, I think I believed courageous people were different than me. I imagined they woke up confident. I imagined they didn't get nervous. I imagined they walked into uncomfortable situations without their stomach being in knots. I imagined they just had it. Whatever it is, confidence, boldness, fearlessness. But the more people I've met, the more business owners I've talked to, the more leaders I've watched, the more I've realized something. The people I admire aren't fearless. They're just willing. Think about that for a minute. They're willing to feel awkward. They're willing to make mistakes. They're willing to ask questions. They're willing to look inexperienced. They're willing to have the first attempt. They're willing to learn publicly. Maybe that's courage. Maybe courage was never about the absence of fear. Maybe courage is simply refusing to let fear have the final word. Because what I've noticed is fear loves certainty. Fear wants guarantees. Fear says, what if it doesn't work? What if they laugh? What if nobody comes? What if I fail? But life doesn't give guarantees. Business doesn't. Relationships don't. Faith doesn't. Very little that's worthwhile comes with certainty. And yet, we keep moving anyway. Not because we know exactly what's going to happen, but because we've decided something matters more than certainty. That changes the conversation. Because if certainty isn't available, then maybe certainty isn't the requirement. Maybe willingness is. When you look back over your life, what's something you did that absolutely terrified you? But today, you're so thankful you did it. Maybe it was getting married. Maybe it was moving across the country. Maybe it was starting your business. Maybe it was leaving a job. It was becoming a parent. It was walking into church by yourself. It was saying yes to something that made no sense at the time. Would you have missed something beautiful if you had waited until you weren't afraid? I know I would have. Looking back at the idea of having a family, having children, there is so much we don't know until we do it. So much we don't know until we do it. And through all of that, especially being a parent, you fail forward. Each child you have is different. So even if you figured it out for the first child, the second one comes along. I mean, those are all things. You have to think of business that way too. You have to think of business that way too. You may not do it right the first time. You may not do it right the 10th time. But if you don't do it, you'll never know. So you have to get past that. Again, think of this as your storefront. This is your face. This is your business. There are moments in my life I almost talked myself out of. Not because they were wrong, but because they were uncomfortable. And I wonder how many blessings fear has tried to disguise as bad ideas. It's a question I've been sitting with because fear isn't always loud. Sometimes fear sounds incredibly practical. Maybe next year. This isn't the right season. Someone else can do it. I'm too old. Oh my gosh. How many times have I heard that? Even in this community, I'm too old. You're not too old. You're still taking breath. You still have breath in your lungs. You're not too old. You're too late, too new, too busy, too underqualified. Fear is amazingly creative. It almost always finds a reason to sound reasonable. We'll spend years believing we're making practical decisions when we're actually making fearful ones. Not every uncomfortable thing is something we're supposed to do. Discernment matters. Timing matters. Wisdom matters. So the community that you're in, the people that you're listening to, besides the recorder that you give yourself, that matters. You need to have people that are supportive, giving you information that pushes you forward. Because if we could all do it by ourselves, we would all be successful and this conversation would mean nothing. But that's not the case. Our case is that we allow fear to keep us from doing the next big thing. Fear keeps us from doing what we're supposed to be doing. And I hate that that is the case, but it is. So that is why we have these conversations, so that I can encourage you to find your community, your people that will help you when you can't do it for yourself, okay? If I say no because something isn't aligned with my values, that's wisdom. If I say no because it isn't right strategy for my business, that's wisdom. But if I say no because I'm afraid someone might laugh, that's a different conversation. And only I know the answer. Nobody watching this live can answer that for me. Nobody in the comments can answer that. That's a conversation between me and me. Between me and God. But it's not between me and you. Because what you do should not control or affect what I do on this side. Whether you're having a conversation, engaging in the comments or not. That should not determine how I show up. Because I'm showing up for me in hopes that you will keep coming back. But that's on me, how I welcome you, how I see you, how I show up for you. That's on me. How you do you, that's not, I can't worry about that. I can't think about that. That can't keep me from showing up the way that I need to for me and my business. Okay? I've learned that honesty is one of the greatest gifts we can give ourselves. Not condemnation, not shame, just honesty. Because honesty gives us freedom. I can do something about an honest fear. I can't do much with a fear I've hidden behind excuses. Okay? And I'm going to give a biblical reference because that is my faith and that makes sense to me. So when I think about this, I think about Peter walking on water, not because I want to turn this into a Bible study, but because I've always found something fascinating about that story. People usually focus on the fact that Peter sank, but I don't. I think about the 11 who never got out of the boat. Peter experienced something none of them ever did, not because he wasn't afraid, but because he was willing to step while he was afraid. How many boats have we stayed in because it felt safer? I don't know what your boat is. Maybe it's going live, maybe it isn't. Maybe your boat is writing the book, starting the business, applying for the position, having the difficult conversation, all of those things, launching the website, introducing yourself as an artist. Do you struggle with that? You're an artist. Whatever it is, I don't think today's conversation has been about convincing you to climb out of the boat. I think it's been about asking, have I mistaken the feeling of fear for the voice of wisdom? Don't do that to yourself. The life we're hoping for isn't waiting for us to become fearless. It's waiting for us to become willing to be seen, willing to learn, willing to begin, willing to grow, willing to trust that we don't have to know everything before we take the first step. That's what courage looks like. Not loud, not dramatic, not fearless, just willing. And I think that's where our conversation has to look at. That's what we have to look at, the willingness. If someone joined this live right now and asked, so what are today's conversations about? Like, what are we talking about? I wouldn't say it's about going live. I'd say it's about what fear is costing us. It's what fear is costing us. It's not just a button on a screen. Going live, it's not just a button on a screen. It's not about algorithms. It's not about missed opportunities, dreams, relationships. It's not about any of that stuff. It's about how fear keeps us from taking the next step that matters for our businesses, for the next place that we want to be. You can't just look at what somebody else is doing and say, I'm not her, I'm not them, I can't do that. Because you're right, you can't. If you've already told yourself that you can't, you're absolutely 1000% right. You can't. It's a mindset thing. It's a mindset thing. Fear has a way of introducing itself wherever growth is happening. FYI, driving now. Carly, drive safe. If we're growing spiritually, fear shows up. If we're growing in business, fear shows up. If we're trying something new, fear shows up. If we're stepping into leadership, fear shows up. It's almost as if fear has a habit of standing near the doorway of the very places we're meant to grow. And instead of asking, why am I afraid? Maybe we should start asking, what am I growing into? Because maybe those two things are connected more than we realize. The things that changed me the most usually weren't the things I felt completely prepared for. They were the things that stretched me, The things that made me pray a little harder, it made me wonder if I was capable. It made me rely on God instead of relying on myself. And looking back, those moments weren't interruptions. They were invitations. Invitations to grow into something and someone I wasn't yet. I wonder if that's what fear sometimes disguises, not danger, but growth. Don't misunderstand me. Some fears are there to protect us. If you're standing at the edge of a cliff, fear is your friend. If something truly isn't safe, fear has a purpose. But that's not the kind of fear we've been talking about today. We've been talking about the fear that whispers. Okay, it's what if you're not enough? What if they don't like you? What if you embarrass yourself? What if you fail? Those fears don't usually protect us. They usually shrink us. And I think there's a difference between being protected and being prevented. Fear often promises protection, but sometimes all it really delivers is limitations. When was the last time fear actually kept you safe from embarrassment? When was the last time fear kept you safe from embarrassment? I laugh at myself. When I do something embarrassing, I actually chuckle at myself because it's going to happen. You're going to do something that embarrasses yourself. I mean, if you can't laugh at yourself, then what can you laugh at? I mean, honestly. But embarrassment passes. Awkward moments pass. Mistakes pass. You know what doesn't pass? Regret. Regret has a way of lingering. Not always, but sometimes. I've talked to enough people over the years to notice something. Very few people say, I wish I hadn't tried. Far more people say, I wish I had. I wish I had started sooner. I wish I believed in myself. I wish I hadn't waited so long. Coffee break. I'm talking a lot, so therefore, I need to wet my whistle. Anyway, what if I hadn't waited so long? I wish I hadn't worried so much about what everybody thought. I wish I had taken the opportunity. Those words have stayed with me. Excuse me. I will need to have my husband edit that out. Just give it a moment. It'll pass. It's making my eyes teared up. I get really emotional sometimes during real talk. It's just my throat doing what my throat does. All right, let's get back into it. I don't want to build a business that's shaped more by my fears than by my values. I don't want to become someone who always chooses the safest path simply because it's familiar. I want my decisions to come from wisdom, from conviction, from purpose, not from anxiety pretending to be strategy. And maybe that's the sentence I'm taking away from today. Not anxiety pretending to be strategy. Because I think we all do that sometimes. We tell ourselves we're being strategic when really we're just scared. And the opposite happens too. Sometimes we accuse ourselves of being afraid when we're actually being wise. That's why this conversation isn't about formulas. It's about honesty. Only you know which one you're experiencing. Only you know whether you're protecting something valuable or protecting yourself from the possibility of being uncomfortable. And that's why I don't want anyone leaving today thinking, well, Claudia said I have to go live. No, that's not what I said. What I hope you heard is this: don't let fear quietly become the architect of your life. Don't let it design your business. Don't let it choose your opportunities. Don't let it write the story before you've even turned the page. Because fear has a remarkable imagination, but so does hope. And here's the beautiful thing: hope doesn't require certainty. Hope simply says it's possible. Maybe it'll work. Maybe you'll enjoy it. Maybe you'll discover something about yourself. Maybe you'll meet people you never would have met. Maybe one conversation changes someone's day. Maybe one customer becomes a lifelong friend. Maybe pressing one little button opens a door you never would have walked through otherwise. Or maybe it simply teaches you something about yourself. And that's valuable too, because every honest attempt teaches us something, even when it doesn't go the way we had planned. So before we end this real talk today, I really, really, really want you to feel more empowered and less alone, more able to have those honest conversations with yourself, knowing that it's important that you take those hard things and do them. Don't let fear dictate what's next for you. Allow yourself the space to fail forward. There are things and ideas that you have had that you have talked yourself out of simply because you were scared. And fear has a way of making you believe things that aren't true. So we've been sitting around the coffee table here now for a while. I just want to say thank you. Thank you for spending part of your day with me. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for sharing your comments, your stories, and your hearts. One of my favorite things about Real Talk is that it never feels like I'm standing on a stage talking to people. It feels like we're simply pulling up a chair, sharing a cup of coffee, and figuring things out together. And I wouldn't trade that for anything. When we first started today, I asked you one simple question: how many opportunities have we missed because we were waiting to feel ready? I hope that as we wrap up, you're leaving with a different question. What opportunity am I going to stop waiting for? Because maybe today wasn't about pressing the go live button at all. Maybe it was about finally saying yes to the next step you've been avoiding. If today's conversation encouraged you, challenged you, or simply gave you something to think about, would you do me a favor? Share it with someone who might need to hear it. Sometimes one honest conversation can become the encouragement someone else has been waiting for. And if you're looking for a community where creative entrepreneurs encourage one another, celebrate wins, work through challenges, and grow together, I'd love to invite you to join me inside the Crafted Collab Network. You don't have to build your business alone. You don't have to do it alone. Next week on Real Talk, we're going to have a deep conversation, because I feel that if we're comfortable all the time, we're not really growing. So that's why we're talking about growth requiring discomfort. Because here's the truth: we all say we want to grow. We work towards growth. We celebrate growth. But growth almost always asks us to leave something comfortable behind. Why is that? Why does every new level stretch us beyond what feels familiar? And how do we know the difference between healthy discomfort and heading the wrong direction? I think it's going to be another honest conversation, and I hope you'll pull up a chair and join me. Until then, keep creating, keep growing, keep learning, and remember, your story isn't written in giant leaps. It's written one faithful step at a time. Until next time, take care. God bless. Keep showing up, and I'll see you next Friday. Sarah, you're so welcome. You're so welcome. Have a wonderful weekend, and I'll see you around social media, friends. Bye.